Hello guys, I'm Tom, and today we're going to explore who the leprechaun really is. One of the most terrifying, monstrous, and at the same time strangely charismatic characters in horror cinema is the leprechaun, a creature born from ancient Irish legends about gold-guarding fairies, but twisted in film into a murderous demon. Its presence has endured over decades through movies, comics, and reboots, leaving a unique mark on the genre. A villain who combines macabre humor with bloody brutality, always driven by an obsessive need to protect its treasure. The leprechaun is not a simple fairy tale elf, nor a playful being who grants wishes. In the films, it is presented as an immortal demonic entity that exists solely to guard every coin of gold it possesses. Its origin is vague and varies depending on the installment, but it is always linked to ancient Celtic curses and dark magic that condemned it to wander eternally, killing anyone who tries to steal or even touch its treasure. Greed lies at the heart of its existence, and that avarice has transformed it into a relentless force of death. In the comics published by Blue Water Comics in 2009, this backstory is expanded with even greater severity. There, it is revealed that the leprechaun is not an isolated case, but part of a race of demonic fairies inhabiting a parallel world, reinforcing the idea that its origin was never tied to humanity. It is a completely unnatural being born of darkness, whose evil does not stem from personal trauma or specific revenge, but from the very essence of its species. Creatures designed to kill and claim wealth as part of their demonic nature. That is why in this video, I will explain in detail the history and origins of the leprechaun. I will summarize its story across the different films, then discuss its physical appearance, personality, and its incredible known abilities and weaknesses. The story begins in North Dakota, where a man named Dan O'Grady returns from a trip to Ireland carrying a very peculiar loot, a pot full of gold coins he took from a leprechaun. However, what seemed like a stroke of luck soon turns into a nightmare. The rightful owner of this treasure, a malicious and cunning being known as the leprechaun, follows O'Grady to his home with the intent of reclaiming what is rightfully his. This small being is not the typical friendly elf of popular legends, but a monstrous creature that combines the classic appearance of Irish folklore with an almost demonic perversity. Dressed in green clothing with a hat and shiny shoes, but with a grotesque face, sharp nails, and a disturbing smile, the leprechaun makes it clear from the start that its gold cannot be stolen without bloody consequences. O'Grady manages to temporarily stop it, using one of the creature's few weaknesses, a four-leaf clover. With it, he immobilizes the leprechaun and traps it inside a wooden box, sealing its prison. However, before he can destroy it completely, O'Grady suffers a stroke, leaving the monster trapped but not destroyed. Thus, the leprechaun remains locked away for a decade, full of hatred and waiting for its opportunity to take revenge and recover every single coin. 10 years later, a young woman named Tori Redding, played by Jennifer Aniston in one of her first roles, arrives at that same house with her father. Soon after, unintentionally, she and her friends release the leprechaun by moving the box in which it had been imprisoned. From that moment, the creature unleashes a wave of violence and terror, obsessed with recovering every last piece of gold from its treasure. The leprechaun uses its supernatural abilities to track its coins, and anyone who stands in its way is killed using cruel, grotesque, and sometimes darkly comedic methods. Its sadism is mixed with a sense of dark humor, giving it a very unique style within the horror genre. It combines bloody, brutal scenes with sarcastic remarks, wordplay, and absurd situations that add a touch of macabre comedy. Throughout the film, the protagonists try to find a way to defeat it, discovering that the four-leaf clover is the only truly effective weapon against it. After a series of bloody and desperate confrontations, they manage to neutralize it by placing the clover in its mouth, causing it to lose its power and ultimately fall into a well, where it is seemingly destroyed. With this first installment, Leprechaun not only establishes the character's origin and mythology, but also the tone that will define the saga. A bold mix of bloody horror and dark humor, featuring a charismatic villain who, despite its ridiculous appearance, becomes an iconic figure in 90s horror cinema. The second installment of the saga interestingly expands the character's mythology and supernatural rules. In this film, a macabre tradition is revealed. Leprechauns have the power to claim a young woman as their bride if she sneezes 3 times consecutively, and during that time, no one utters a blessing on her behalf. This detail, inspired by ancient superstitions related to sneezes and blessings, introduces a new element to the story, giving the creature a more twisted and ritualistic aspect. The plot begins with a flashback, showing the leprechaun attempting to claim a maiden as his fiancée, but the plan fails. However, with his immortal patience, he promises to return 1,000 years later to achieve his goal, marking an inevitable fate for the descendants of that young woman. This detail adds a generational curse aspect to the story, as if the leprechaun is not only pursuing gold, but also revenge and the fulfillment of twisted desires. The story then moves to the contemporary era, placing us in the city of Los Angeles, a completely different setting from the first film. In this chaotic urban environment, the leprechaun resurfaces, determined to find his bride, who turns out to be the direct descendant of the young woman he tried to claim centuries earlier. The film plays with the contrast between the mythical Irish creature and the modern world, achieving a tone that oscillates between the grotesque, the macabre, and the absurdly comedic. As the story progresses, the leprechaun uses his magical powers to manipulate, kill, and make his way toward his objective. His crimes maintain the signature style of the saga: creative, bloody deaths imbued with dark humor. Additionally, his lecherous and obsessive nature is emphasized even further, as he no longer pursues only gold. His primary motivation now is to forcibly claim a human wife, adding a new level of perversity to his personality. The mix of Irish mythology with elements typical of 90s, low-budget horror cinema makes Leprechaun to a peculiar installment. Here, the saga's characteristic style is solidified, a hybrid of horror, absurd comedy, and grotesque moments, where the creature remains a parody of classic monsters, but with its own unique touch that sets it apart. In this third installment, the saga moves the leprechaun from the forests and suburbs to the heart of Las Vegas, the city of sin, excess, and glittering casinos. This change of setting is no accident. The American metropolis, with its obsession with easy money and fulfilled desires, becomes the perfect terrain for the leprechaun to unleash all his cruelty and cunning. The leprechaun, always obsessed with his gold, discovers that his wealth has an even more dangerous effect on humans. It can grant wishes, but in a twisted and deadly way. Every wish granted comes with cruel irony, causing those who seek quick fortune to pay a bloody and macabre price. For example, someone who asks for wealth might obtain it through the death of others, or receive exactly what they wanted, but in a way that puts their own life in danger. This dynamic reinforces the idea that the leprechaun's magic is neither benevolent nor fair. It reflects his twisted and vengeful personality. The film delves deeper into the corrupting nature of his magic. He doesn't just kill those who stand in his way in horrific ways. He manipulates human greed, ambition, and desire, turning the pursuit of wealth into a deadly game. Unlike the previous installments, here the social satire becomes more apparent. Las Vegas, with its lights, games, and lust, becomes a mirror of humanity's darkest desires, which the leprechaun gleefully exploits. Throughout the story, we see scenes of elaborately grotesque murders, where dark humor and violence intertwine in the saga's characteristic way. From casino traps to macabre explosions and bizarre tortures, The film maintains the absurd and terrifying tone that distinguishes the series, but with an added exaggeration thanks to the urban and luxurious setting. Although the leprechaun remains obsessed with his gold, he demonstrates that his true power lies in his ability to manipulate humans through their desires. His cruelty is no longer limited to killing for fun. He now also plays with people's psychology, making their own greed the cause of their destruction. This approach adds greater depth to the character, showing that his magic is both a tool for murder and a metaphor for the corruption inherent in unchecked desire. In this fourth installment, the saga takes a radical turn toward science fiction, transporting the leprechaun to a distant future and an entirely unprecedented setting, outer space. Far from the Irish forests or the streets of Las Vegas, this film shows the leprechaun aboard a spaceship, blending grotesque horror with absurdly comedic and futuristic elements. This shift in context highlights the character's versatility, capable of adapting to any environment while maintaining his characteristic cruelty. The central plot focuses on the leprechaun's obsession with claiming a young woman as his bride, in this case represented by an alien princess. His intentions are not limited to a forced marriage. The leprechaun has far grander ambitions, planning to conquer the universe using his magical powers and malevolent cunning. This premise raises the level of absurdity in the saga, turning the leprechaun into an almost intergalactic villain whose obsession with gold, forced marriages, and violence now transcends the boundaries of Earth. Upon reaching space, the leprechaun faces a cast of humans and extraterrestrials who try to thwart his plans. Here, his creativity in killing is intensified. Traps and murders become more elaborate, taking advantage of futuristic technology, zero gravity, and space environments to generate macabre, absurd, and often darkly humorous deaths. Each scene combines the saga's classic horror with science fiction, creating a unique contrast that, while extravagant, preserves the grotesque essence of the character. The leprechaun demonstrates once again that his power lies not only in the magic of gold, but also in his ability to manipulate and corrupt those around him. His obsession with the alien princess reflects his lecherous and obsessive nature, while his ambition for universal conquest underscores the magnitude of his madness. The film thus becomes a spectacle of excess. Blood, violence, dark humor, and futuristic elements merge into a delirious narrative that remains surprisingly coherent within the absurd logic of the saga. Despite being one of the most eccentric and criticized installments of the series, Leprechaun 4 in Space introduces a new level of imagination to the Leprechaun universe. The blend of grotesque horror with science fiction, combined with his characteristic dark humor and creative murders, establishes this film as a unique milestone, showing that even in the vacuum of space, the leprechaun's greed, obsession, and evil know no bounds. In this fifth installment, the Leprechaun saga takes a radical turn toward contemporary urban culture, setting the story in the African-American neighborhoods of Los Angeles. This change of setting allows the film to blend elements of horror, absurd comedy, and hip-hop culture, creating an unusual but distinctive contrast within the saga. Here, the creature not only pursues gold or forced brides, but becomes directly involved in a conflict with modern humans, particularly a group of ambitious rappers. The central plot revolves around a magical flute belonging to the leprechaun, an artifact capable of hypnotizing and controlling people, turning them into instruments of his will. The rappers, eager for power and fame, steal the flute, triggering a series of deadly events. This premise allows for the exploration of a different aspect of the character, his obsession with magical objects not only linked to wealth, but also to control and domination. The flute becomes a symbol of absolute power, and, at the same time, a tool that enhances the leprechaun's grotesque creativity in punishing offenders. Throughout the film, The leprechaun displays his characteristic cunning and cruelty through elaborate murders and scenes laden with dark humor. From deadly traps to absurdly violent situations, his violence is mixed with cartoonish elements, maintaining the grotesque and exaggerated tone of the saga. Additionally, the film plays with references to urban culture. The world of hip-hop, gang conflicts, music, and street fashion are intertwined with the horror narrative, creating a unique hybrid that reinforces the series' extravagance. This installment also emphasizes the leprechaun's cunning. He is not only a bloodthirsty killer, but a manipulator who knows how to exploit human greed and ambition. His interaction with the rappers demonstrates how he can turn the pursuit of wealth and fame into a deadly game, showing that his magic is as dangerous as his wit. Every attempt by the characters to use or escape from the flute results in grotesque and creatively bloody situations, cementing the leprechaun's reputation as an unpredictable and terrifyingly comedic villain. In this sixth installment, the saga returns to the urban neighborhoods of Los Angeles, continuing the story established in Leprechaun in the Hood. Here, the leprechaun not only maintains his obsession with gold and magical objects, but also focuses on seeking revenge against anyone who dares to steal or desecrate his treasures. This film functions as a direct sequel, revisiting elements of urban culture, hip-hop, and life in African-American neighborhoods, but taking them to an even more extreme and grotesque level. The plot centers on a group of young people who, either by chance or greed, discover the leprechaun's buried gold in their neighborhood. This discovery unleashes the creature's fury, and he quickly demonstrates that his patience is nearly limitless and that he will not hesitate to use any method to reclaim what he considers his. From bloody traps to creative murders, the leprechaun's violence is combined with his characteristic dark humor, producing grotesque, absurd, and often comedic scenes, but always deadly. In this installment, the leprechaun's malicious intelligence is emphasized more than ever. His pursuit is not merely physical. He uses his wit and magic to manipulate the young people and sow chaos. The scenes show how he turns human greed and curiosity into weapons of destruction, making the characters themselves inadvertently contribute to their downfall. Additionally, the film maintains the contrast between the urban and the fantastical, blending everyday neighborhood elements with the creature's supernatural and twisted presence. In Back to the Hood, the leprechaun also expands his repertoire of weapons and magical abilities. He is not limited to gold or physical violence. He can use spells and magical tricks to trap his victims, hypnotize them, or manipulate the environment to his advantage. This reinforces the idea that, despite his small stature, he is virtually unstoppable, and that his greed and obsession make him a multifaceted and terrifyingly creative villain. Leprechaun Origins marks a radical reboot of the saga, completely moving away from the comedic and absurd tone that had characterized the previous installments. This film takes a more serious approach, closer to classic and supernatural horror, presenting the leprechaun not as a caricatured character, but as a monstrous and terrifying creature designed to instill real fear in the audience. The story is set in the rural landscapes of Ireland, returning to the folkloric roots of the leprechaun myth. A group of American tourists travels to the country seeking adventure and natural beauty, but they soon become the target of an ancient threat. The creature that stalks them is wild, intelligent, and ruthless. Its small size is deceptive at first glance, but its strength, speed, and cunning make it a deadly predator capable of eliminating any intruder who dares to disturb its territory. This reboot focuses on pure, psychological horror. The film explores how human fear and vulnerability are magnified in the face of an enemy that combines ancient magic with animalistic ferocity. Unlike the leprechauns of previous installments, there is no humor or jokes here. Every attack is bloody, meticulously executed, and designed to create constant tension. The narrative also emphasizes the protagonist's isolation. Trapped in the Irish countryside, surrounded by dark forests and rugged terrain, they must face the creature with no hope of external help, heightening the sense of desperation and imminent danger. Visually, Leprechaun Origins departs from the bright and exaggerated colors of the original saga, adopting a dark and somber palette that reinforces the terrifying tone. The creature is redesigned to be genuinely frightening. Sharp teeth, fast and predatory movements, and an appearance that more closely resembles a folkloric monster than a mischievous elf. This transforms the leprechaun into a far more serious and realistic threat, aimed at an audience seeking genuine horror rather than gore comedy. Leprechaun Returns represents a return to the origins of the saga, ignoring all the intervening sequels and positioning itself as a direct continuation of the first 1993 film. The story revisits the myth of the original Leprechaun, maintaining its blend of horror and dark humor, while updating the narrative for a contemporary audience. The plot begins 25 years after the events of the first movie, when the cabin where the leprechaun had been imprisoned is rebuilt by a group of young college women seeking a temporary retreat. Unaware of the dark history of the place, the girls inadvertently disturb the seal that kept the creature trapped. This action triggers the leprechaun's resurrection, and he emerges more vengeful and dangerous than ever, determined to reclaim his gold and punish anyone who stands in his way. The film focuses on a combination of suspense and creative violence. The leprechaun not only pursues his victims physically, but also uses his malevolent cunning to manipulate situations, ambush them, and create bloody and grotesque deaths, often accompanied by his signature dark humor. Every scene demonstrates that, despite his small stature, his intelligence and cruelty make him a formidable and terrifying adversary. The leprechaun's return also emphasizes his obsession with greed and vengeance. While he targets the young women, his primary motivation remains protecting his treasure and punishing human recklessness. This approach preserves the spirit of the first film, where the leprechaun's gold was not merely a material incentive, but also a catalyst for terror and chaos. Visually, Leprechaun Returns combines classic elements of the saga, such as the isolated cabin and dark forests, with modern horror techniques that heighten tension and the impact of the bloody scenes. The creature retains its distinctive appearance, with grotesque features, a malevolent grin, and mischievous yet deadly behavior, reinforcing the blend of horror and comedy that made the character iconic from the very beginning. In 2009, the mythology of the leprechaun expanded considerably through the comics, offering fans a deeper and more complex view of this iconic villain. While the films had primarily focused on his obsession with gold, revenge, and, in some installments, forced brides, the comics explored his universe from a broader and more supernatural perspective. In these graphic stories, the leprechaun is not just a solitary being obsessed with his treasure. He is shown interacting and battling other supernatural entities, such as demons, ghosts, and magical creatures from various traditions. These confrontations highlight not only his cunning and cruelty, but also his ability to adapt to threats beyond the human realm, demonstrating that he is a formidable adversary even among mystical beings. Furthermore, the comics delve into the race to which he belongs, revealing that demonic leprechauns are part of a larger, darker lineage. This approach expands his origin, suggesting that he is not merely a mischievous Irish elf, but a creature with far deeper and more complex supernatural roots, possessing magical abilities, superhuman strength, and extended longevity. This background adds a new level of seriousness and mysticism to the franchise, providing context for his malevolent behavior and his obsession with gold, revenge, and control. The tone of the comics combines horror, action, and elements of dark fantasy, showing that the leprechaun can be a much more versatile character than what had been seen in the films. His confrontations with other supernatural beings, present him not only as a grotesque and comedic villain, but also as an antagonist with powers and knowledge that rival any magical or demonic creature in the fictional universe. And now, having thoroughly covered his history, I want to talk about the leprechaun's physical appearance, what we know about his personality and behavior, and explain his incredible known abilities and weaknesses. The leprechaun has shown a remarkable physical evolution over the decades, reflecting both his malevolent nature and the era of each film. In his classic version from 1993 to 2003, he is depicted as a tiny, almost caricatured being, yet disturbingly sinister. His face is deeply wrinkled, accentuating his malevolent and grotesque expression, while his yellowed and uneven teeth give him an air of contained monstrosity beneath his nearly human appearance. His messy, tangled red beard, pointed ears, and bright eyes convey cunning and cruelty. He wears a traditional green suit, complemented by a matching hat and boots that appear too large for his small frame, adding a strange and unsettling touch that sits somewhere between Irish folklore and dark horror. In Origins, his appearance changes radically, almost entirely abandoning his humanoid look. The creature becomes monstrous, with features that resemble a demon more than a simple elf. His body is bulkier and disproportionate, with exaggerated limbs and prominent musculature, rough skin, and eyes that glow with a hellish light, reinforcing his aura of primal threat, a being born of horror rather than folklore. For returns, the leprechaun partially recovers his classic image, but with a far more terrifying and modernized appearance suitable for contemporary horror cinema. His face retains the wrinkles and mischievous air of the original, but makeup and special effects make him more sinister. His teeth appear sharper, his eyes more piercing, and his expressions crueler and more exaggerated, effectively blending the caricatured with the macabre. This balance between the familiar and the terrifying allows his appearance to be instantly recognizable, while provoking discomfort and fear in the audience, reminding viewers that beneath his diminutive size hides an unstoppable and dangerous being. The leprechaun is a being defined by his obsessive fixation on his gold. It does not matter if someone dares to take even a single coin. Such an act immediately marks them as the target of his relentless wrath. His greed is not merely material, but a driving force that guides every one of his movements, transforming him into a tireless and meticulously calculating hunter. Those who interfere with his treasure find themselves trapped in a deadly game, where the leprechaun's amusement intertwines with the most ruthless brutality. His sadism is as sophisticated as it is cruel. He delights not only in physical harm, but also in the psychological torment of his victims. He tortures them with a combination of clever traps, macabre pranks, and disturbingly playful rhymes that emphasize his twisted joy in others' suffering. Every action he takes is imbued with a perverse sense of play, as if each death were a spectacle he has painstakingly prepared, reveling in the despair reflected on the faces of those who cross his path. Despite his small size and grotesque appearance, the leprechaun possesses sharp and cunning intelligence that makes him a master of deception and manipulation. He can anticipate his victims' moves, create illusions to confuse them, and exploit any human weakness with meticulous cruelty. His behavior is not impulsive, but strategically planned, making him even more dangerous. Every action is designed to maximize terror and the effectiveness of his revenge. At the same time, his dark humor adds a disturbing layer to his personality. He blends twisted jokes with brutal violence, turning terrible situations into grotesque, darkly comic spectacles. This combination of cunning sadism and humor makes the leprechaun an unforgettable adversary. Small in stature, yet enormous in evil, a being who transforms human greed into a stage of horror where every joke and every laugh conceals a deadly fate. The leprechaun is not simply a malevolent being obsessed with his gold. He is a creature whose combination of magical powers, superhuman strength, and cunning makes him a truly terrifying threat. His magic manifests in multiple ways. He can weave illusions so convincing that his victims see non-existent horrors or deceive themselves, trapped in imaginary mazes where every choice feels like a dead end. Teleportation is another of his most fearsome weapons. He vanishes from one place and appears in another instantly, always a step ahead of those who try to flee or confront him. His mental manipulation is not limited to instilling fear. He can confuse the senses, induce paranoia, and even partially control his victims, driving them to commit acts that bring them closer to their own doom. Around him, everyday objects become extensions of his will. A simple chair or utensil can transform into an instrument of torture within seconds, thrown or manipulated with supernatural precision. His body, small but deceptive, possesses immense strength. He can easily lift adults, bend light metals, or break down doors with a single push. Even wounds that would seem lethal to any ordinary human heal quickly thanks to his regenerative abilities, making him practically invulnerable to conventional attacks. His weapons are not merely physical. His sharp claws cut through flesh and wood with equal ease. His magical flute can emit sounds that disorient, induce fear, or alter reality around him, and any enchanted object he possesses becomes an instrument of calculated death. Every action he takes is carefully planned, combining violence with theatricality, as if each victim were part of a macabre game in which the leprechaun always wins. Yet even such a formidable being has weaknesses, and these are as precise as they are dangerous to him. The four-leaf clover, a symbol of good fortune and purity, can immobilize him or drain his energy, leaving him vulnerable for a limited time. In certain versions, iron is a material that severely harms him, reminding us that his magic and strength have limits against specific elements. His gold, the object of his infinite obsession, not only defines him but also sustains him. If his coins are destroyed or stolen, his power diminishes, his magic weakens, and his temperament becomes more erratic. Paradoxically, his greed, which drives him to act with such ferocity, also makes him predictable. The clever can lure him into traps, deceptions, or distractions if they exploit his obsession. Finally, although his immortality protects him from the passage of time and natural death, magical confinement, using containers sealed with specific symbols or spells, can temporarily restrain him, demonstrating that human cunning and preparation can still prevail, even if only briefly, against his malice. This combination of abilities and vulnerabilities makes the leprechaun a fascinating and terrifying antagonist. He is small, yes, but every movement is laden with danger. Every glance and every laugh conceals deadly plans. His magical powers and immense strength create an almost invincible being, while his weaknesses offer a fleeting reprieve, reminding us that even the most legendary villains can be defeated if their secrets are known. The creature embodies the perfect fusion of terror, cunning, and fantasy, making every encounter with him a deadly game where the line between human ingenuity and supernatural horror is completely blurred.